The hydroponics bay hummed with artificial life, its blue-white grow lights casting an ethereal glow across rows of engineered crops that would never know natural soil. Nia Thorne knelt beside a nutrient flow regulator, her calloused fingers dancing across the diagnostic panel with practiced precision. The readings were perfect: oxygen levels optimal, pH balanced, mineral content exactly where it needed to be for the wheat analogs that would feed 3,000 miners for the next 6 months. She should have felt satisfied. Instead, the familiar ache in her chest reminded her that perfection meant nothing when it was built on lies. Still working late, Thorne? The voice belonged to Garrett Mills, the station's agricultural supervisor. His weathered face appeared around the corner of a growing tower. Concern etched in the lines around his eyes. It's past midnight. Ship time. Nia didn't look up from her readings. The atmospheric processors on level 7 are showing irregular patterns. I want to make sure we don't have contamination spreading to the food systems. It was a lie, and they both knew it. She'd solved the level 7 problem 3 hours ago. What kept her here night after night was the desperate need to stay busy enough that her mind couldn't wander to the memories that lived in the dark spaces between thoughts. Garrett moved closer, his heavy boots clanking against the metal grating. Nia, you can't keep doing this to yourself. It's been 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days since they'd executed her mother for treason. The station needs you healthy and sane. Garrett's voice carried the weight of someone who'd watched too many good people destroy themselves. Your mother wouldn't want this for you. The diagnostic tool slipped from Nia's fingers. Clattering to the floor, she squeezed her eyes shut, fighting the wave of grief that always threatened to drown her when someone mentioned Elena Thorne. Her mother had been the chief terraforming engineer for the Kepler colony ship New Dawn, brilliant, dedicated, and utterly incapable of the sabotage they'd accused her of. My mother was innocent. The words came out sharper than Nia intended. She didn't sabotage anything. She died because someone needed a scapegoat for their own failures. Garrett sighed, settling onto a supply crate nearby. I know you believe that. I don't believe it. I know it. Nia finally looked at him, her dark eyes blazing with conviction. I've been going through her research files, her personal logs, everything. The atmospheric failure on New Dawn wasn't sabotage. It was a design flaw in the tertiary life support systems that corporate executives ignored because fixing it would have cost too much. She pulled a data pad from her tool belt, fingers flying across the surface as she called up months of painstaking research. Look at this. 3 other colony ships using the same atmospheric design suffered similar failures in the past decade. Each time, they blamed equipment malfunction or operator error. But the pattern is clear. There's a systemic flaw that the Meridian Corporation has been covering up. Garrett leaned forward, squinting at the data streams and technical schematics. He was a good man, but agricultural systems were his expertise, not atmospheric engineering. Still, even he could see the consistency in the failure patterns Nia had highlighted. Even if you're right, he said carefully, what can you do about it? The trial is over. The company's moved on. Your mother is dead. I know. Nia's voice cracked slightly. But the people responsible are still out there, still making decisions that put colonists at risk, still profiting from their negligence while good people pay the price. She stood abruptly, pacing between the growing towers like a caged predator. Did you know that 3 of the executives who testified against my mother have been promoted? Since the trial, Marcus Webb is now Meridian's Director of Colonial Operations. The man who called my mother a terrorist is in charge of all terraforming projects in the Outer Rim. Garrett watched her pace, recognizing the dangerous energy that had been building in her for months. Nia, you're talking about some of the most powerful people in human space. Even if you could prove they were involved in a cover-up, I can prove it. She stopped pacing, turning to face him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. I've been tracking financial records, communication logs, anything I can access through the station's networks. There's a money trail, Garrett. Payments made to silence witnesses. Contracts awarded to companies that helped maintain the cover-up. Bonuses paid to executives who stayed quiet. She pulled up another file on her data pad, showing him a complex web of financial transactions that looked like a conspiracy theorist's fever dream. It goes all the way to the top. The Meridian board knew about the design flaws before New Dawn launched. They chose to risk thousands of lives rather than delay the mission and lose their government contracts. Garrett stared at the data, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the station's climate control. Jesus, Naya, if this is real, it's real. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And they killed my mother to keep it secret, made her into a monster in the history books to cover their own crimes. The agricultural supervisor ran a hand through his graying hair, suddenly looking older than his 53 years. What are you planning to do? Naya was quiet for a long moment, staring at the stars visible through the bay's observation window. Somewhere out there, the New Dawn was a drifting tomb. Its colonists dead because of corporate greed, and Elena Thorne was remembered as a saboteur instead of the hero who'd tried to save them. I'm going to make them pay, she said finally, all of them. I'm going to expose what they did and make sure the galaxy knows the truth about my mother. That's not revenge, Naya. That's justice. There's a difference. She turned to look at him, and Garrett saw something in her eyes that made his blood run cold. It was the look of someone who'd already crossed a line in their mind, who'd moved beyond the reach of reason or restraint. Maybe, Naya said, but I'm not sure I care about the difference anymore. The next morning, Naya submitted her resignation to the station administrator. She packed her few belongings into a single cargo container and used her savings to book passage on a freight hauler bound for the Outer Rim territories. She told herself she was leaving to investigate, to gather evidence, to find the truth. But as Kepler 440 to be shrank to a point of light behind the ship's engines, Naya touched the pendant around her neck, her mother's engineering badge, worn smooth by years of handling, and whispered a promise to the stars. The galaxy had taken everything from her. Now it was time to take something back. The freight hauler broken chain wasn't much to look at, but its captain, a grizzled veteran named Torres, asked no questions and accepted payment in untraceable credits. Naya spent the 3-day journey to the border worlds studying star charts and making lists, names, locations, weaknesses. Marcus Webb would be first. The cantina on Vega's Reach smelled like recycled air, cheap synthetic alcohol, and broken dreams. Cale Reeves sat in the corner booth he'd claimed as his own, nursing a glass of something that might have been whiskey if you squinted at it in the right light. His ship, the Nighthawk, was docked 3 levels down with a cargo hold full of medical supplies that weren't technically legal but weren't technically illegal either. The kind of gray market merchandise that kept him fed and flying in the lawless territories of the Outer Rim. He was contemplating whether to take a job running weapons to the Centauri rebels when she walked in. Naya Thorne didn't look like trouble, which was exactly why Cale knew she was dangerous. She moved through the cantina with the careful precision of someone who'd learned not to trust shadows, her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, her clothes the nondescript coveralls of a station tech. But her eyes swept the room. Like a predator cataloging threats and escape routes, she approached his table without hesitation, sliding into the seat across from him with the confidence of someone who'd done her homework. Cale Reeves, she said. It wasn't a question. He took another sip of his maybe whiskey, studying her over the rim of his glass. Do I know you, sweetheart? You ran supplies to the mining colonies during the Titan War, got court-martialed for refusing to abandon civilians during the Kepler evacuation, drummed out of the fleet and blacklisted from respectable shipping companies. She folded her hands on the table, her voice matter-of-fact. Now you fly cargo that other people won't touch for clients who can't use legitimate channels. Cale set down his glass with deliberate care. That's an interesting bedtime story. What's your point? My point is that you're exactly the kind of pilot I need. Someone with military training who doesn't ask uncomfortable questions about the law. Depends on the job. He leaned back in his seat, projecting casual indifference while his hand drifted closer to the blaster at his hip. And who's asking? Naya Thorne. And I need passage to Meridian Prime. The name hit him like a punch to the gut. Meridian Prime was the corporate headquarters of the largest terraforming company in human space, nestled deep in the core worlds where security was tight and questions were dangerous. It was also the last place any sensible smuggler would want to go, Meridian Prime. He repeated slowly, "That's core world space. Heavy patrol routes, customs inspections, the works. My ship doesn't exactly have legitimate registration, I know. That's why I'm willing to pay 50,000 credits for the trip." Kel's poker face was legendary among the smugglers and pirates of the Rim, but he felt his eyebrows climb toward his hairline. 50,000 was serious money, the kind of payday that could buy new ship systems, settle old debts, maybe even fund a trip back to civilized space. "That's a generous offer for a simple transport job," he said carefully. "Makes a man wonder what kind of cargo he'd be carrying. Just me, and some personal effects. Personal effects that someone wants to take to Meridian Prime badly enough to pay black market prices." Kale shook his head. "Lady, I may be desperate, but I'm not stupid. Whatever you're planning, it's going to bring heat. The kind of heat that gets ships impounded and pilots disappeared." Naya reached into her jacket slowly, keeping her hands visible, and pulled out a data pad. She slid it across the table, her fingers trembling almost imperceptibly. 3 weeks ago, Marcus Webb was promoted to Director of Colonial Operations. He's scheduled to give a presentation to the Meridian Board about new terraforming initiatives. The presentation includes budget allocations for atmospheric systems on 12 colony ships currently under construction. Kale glanced at the data pad but didn't pick it up. "Congratulations to Mr. Webb. What does this have to do with me?" Webb was one of the key witnesses in my mother's trial. He testified that Elena Thorne deliberately sabotaged the New Dawn's life support systems, killing 3,000 colonists. Naya's voice remained steady, but Kale could see the fire burning behind her controlled facade. What he didn't mention was that he approved the original atmospheric design despite knowing it was flawed, or that he received a 2 million credit bonus for his testimony. Understanding dawned, bringing with it a familiar weight in Kel's chest. He'd seen that look before in the eyes of refugees fleeing corporate wars, in the faces of colonists abandoned by the companies that had promised them new worlds. It was the look of someone who'd lost everything and had nothing left to lose. "Your mother was Elena Thorne." He picked up the data pad, scrolling through financial records and communication logs that painted a picture of corruption so vast it made his stomach turn. "The New Dawn saboteur, the New Dawn scapegoat," Naya corrected. "My mother died for their lies. Now I'm going to make sure the truth comes out." Kale set the data pad down, his expression grim. "You're not planning to expose them. You're planning to kill them. I'm planning to get justice. Justice is what happens in courtrooms. What you're talking about is revenge." He finished his drink in one burning gulp. "I've been down that road, sweetheart. It doesn't lead anywhere good." For the first time since she'd sat down, Naya's composure cracked. Her hands clenched into fists on the table, her eyes blazing with grief and fury. "They destroyed my family, made my mother into a monster in the history books. Webb and his cronies are living in luxury while she's buried in an unmarked grave on some prison moon." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Tell me you wouldn't want revenge if it was your family." Kale was quiet for a long moment, staring into his empty glass. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of old pain. "I had a sister, Victoria. She was a medic on a hospital ship during the war." He traced patterns on the table with his finger, not meeting Naya's eyes. The ship was clearly marked, broadcasting medical transponder codes. The Titan forces hit it anyway, said later it was a targeting error. Offered condolences and compensation to the families. "I'm sorry," Naya said softly. "I spent 2 years hunting the pilot who fired the missiles. Found him eventually, running a cargo business on some backwater world. Had my blaster to his head, ready to pull the trigger." Kale finally looked up, his blue eyes haunted. "You know what stopped me?" Naya shook her head. "He had kids. A little girl who looked just like Vic did when she was that age. I realized that killing him wouldn't bring my sister back. It would just create more orphans, more people with reasons for revenge." He pushed the data pad back across the table. "The cycle never ends, Naya. Violence just breeds more violence. This is different," she insisted. "This isn't about revenge. It's about preventing them from doing it again. How many more colony ships are going to fail because Webb and his friends care more about profits Then lives. Cale studied her face, seeing the desperate conviction of someone trying to convince herself as much as him. He recognized the signs because he'd been there, that moment when grief transforms into purpose, when the need for justice becomes indistinguishable from the hunger for vengeance. And what happens after you expose them, assuming you live long enough to get the information out? I don't know, Naya admitted. I haven't thought that far ahead. The honesty of the admission hit him harder than any argument could have. She wasn't a criminal or a terrorist. She was just a grieving daughter who'd been pushed too far by a system that protected the guilty and punished the innocent. Cale sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. Meridian Prime is a fortress, corporate security, federal marshals, private military contractors. Even if I could get you there without being arrested, how do you plan to get close to Webb? I've been studying his schedule, his habits, his security protocols. Naya pulled up another file on her data pad. He has a private office on the 120th floor of the Meridian Tower. Every Tuesday at 1400 hours, he meets with department heads to review colonial project status. The meetings last exactly 90 minutes. Security to bodyguards, standard corporate protection. The building has automated defense systems, but they're designed to stop external threats, not someone who's already inside. She looked up at him, hope flickering in her eyes. I can get in if you can get me to the planet. Cale was quiet for a long moment, weighing options and consequences. Taking this job would mean burning bridges he couldn't afford to lose, risking his ship and his freedom for a woman he'd just met. It was stupid, dangerous, and exactly the kind of idealistic nonsense that had gotten him court-martialed in the first place. 50,000, he said finally, half up front, half when we reach Meridian Prime. And we do this my way, no unnecessary risks, no cowboy heroics. You get your evidence, and we get out clean. Relief flooded Naya's features. You'll do it. I'll do it. He stood up, tossing credits on the table to cover his drinks. But we're not going in blind. I've got contacts in the core worlds, people who owe me favors. We're going to need help if we want to survive this. As they left the cantina together, Cale tried to ignore the voice in his head that warned him he was making a mistake. He'd sworn off cousins after Victoria died, promised himself he'd stick to simple cargo runs and honest smuggling. But something about Naya Thorne reminded him of the man he'd been before the war broke him. Someone who believed that doing the right thing mattered more than staying safe. He just hoped they'd both live long enough. The newsroom of the Galactic Herald never slept, but at 3 in the morning, the usual chaos had settled into the quiet hum of overnight operations. Zara Voss sat at her workstation in the investigative division, surrounded by empty coffee cups and towers of data drives that represented 6 months of the most dangerous research of her career. The blue glow of multiple screens illuminated her face, highlighting the dark circles under her green eyes and the determined set of her jaw. She'd been chasing ghosts through corporate databases and government archives, following a trail of breadcrumbs that led deeper into the labyrinth of corruption than she'd ever imagined possible. What had started as a routine investigation into terraforming safety violations had become something much darker, a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of human government. Still here, Voss. The voice belonged to Marcus Chen, the Herald's night editor. He approached her desk with the careful step of someone who'd learned to recognize when a reporter was on the edge of something big or something that could get them both killed. Can't sleep, Zara muttered, not looking up from her screens. Too much caffeine. Too many questions. Marcus perched on the edge of her desk, moving aside a stack of printouts covered in her cramped handwriting. Want to talk about it? Maybe a fresh perspective would help. Zara finally looked up, her expression haunted. Remember the New Dawn incident 2 years ago? Colony ship atmospheric failure, 3,000 dead, terraforming engineer executed. For sabotage, Elena Thorne. Yeah, I remember. Tragic case. Marcus frowned. Why are you looking into ancient history? Because it's not ancient, and it's not history. Zara pulled up a holographic display showing a complex web of connections, names, dates, financial transactions, all linked by thin lines of light. I've been tracking patterns in colonial atmospheric failures over the past decade. 11 ships. Marcus. 11 colony vessels. that suffered equipment malfunctions resulting in total life support. Failure. Marcus leaned forward, studying the display. That's a lot of coincidences. Not coincidences. Cover-ups. Zara's fingers danced across her keyboard, highlighting specific data points. Every single ship was using atmospheric systems manufactured by subsidiaries of the Meridian Corporation. Every single investigation concluded with equipment failure or operator error, and in each case, someone conveniently took the blame. She pulled up personnel files, engineers, technicians, maintenance crews who'd been blamed for the failures. Some had been executed like Elena Thorne. Others had died in suspicious accidents or disappeared entirely. They're killing witnesses, Zara continued, her voice tight with controlled anger. Anyone who might have knowledge of the systematic flaws in Meridian's atmospheric designs. The New Dawn wasn't the first cover-up, it was just the biggest. Marcus was quiet for a moment, processing the implications. Zara, you're talking about mass murder on an unprecedented scale. 11 ships, thousands of colonists, if you're right. This makes the corporate wars look like playground disputes. I know how it sounds, but look at this, she called up. Another file, this one showing financial records from the Terran Colonial Authority. Every time there's a malfunction, Meridian receives emergency contracts to retrofit other ships in the fleet. They're literally profiting from their own failures. Jesus. Marcus ran a hand through his graying hair. How deep does this go? All the way to the top. Zara's voice dropped to a whisper. I've been tracking communication records between Meridian executives and government officials. There's a pattern of meetings, payments, and policy changes that suggests coordination at the highest levels. She pulled up a new display showing communication logs between Meridian's board of directors and various government officials. The names made Marcus's blood run cold. Senators, colonial administrators, even members of the Terran Defense Council. Senator Patricia Hawthorne, Zara said, highlighting one particular thread of communications. Chair of the Colonial Development Committee. She's received over 3 million credits in consulting fees from Meridian over the past 5 years. In exchange, she's helped push through legislation that reduces safety inspections and limits corporate liability for colonial accidents. Marcus stared at the evidence, feeling the weight of a story that could topple governments and reshape human space. Zara, this is Pulitzer material, but it's also the kind of expose that gets reporters killed. I know, she saved. Her work activated multiple encryption protocols. That's why I've been careful. Everything is backed up on secure servers, copies sent to trusted contacts. If something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you. Marcus's voice carried more conviction than he felt. But we need to be smart about this. These people have unlimited resources and no apparent conscience. We can't just publish this and hope for the best. Zara nodded, already thinking 3 steps ahead. I need more evidence. Something that directly links the government officials to the cover-ups, communications, financial records, something that proves they knew people were dying and chose to look the other way. Where are you going to find something like that? Before she could answer, her secure communication terminal chimed with an incoming message. Zara frowned. Very few people had access to her encrypted channels, and none of them should be contacting her at this hour. The message was from an anonymous sender, routed through multiple proxy servers. It contained a single line of text. I have what you're looking for. Pier 47, Luna City Spaceport. Come alone. Marcus read over her shoulder, his expression grim. It's a trap, maybe. Zara was already reaching for her jacket. But maybe it's the break I've been waiting for. You can't seriously be considering this. Anonymous messages from unknown sources. That's investigative journalism 101. What not to do. Zara paused in the act of putting on her jacket, looking at him with the expression of someone who'd already made up her mind. Marcus, I've spent 6 months documenting the deaths of thousands of innocent people. If there's even a chance that someone has evidence that could bring down the people responsible, I have to take it, then take backup, security, recording, equipment, something. The message said to come alone. She grabbed her data pad and a small recording device, slipping both into hidden pockets. Besides, Luna City is neutral territory. Even Meridian wouldn't be stupid enough to try something there. Marcus watched her prepare to leave, recognizing the dangerous gleam in her eyes that he'd seen in too many reporters who'd gotten too close to Tobiga's story. Zara, promise me something. If this feels wrong, if anything seems off, you get out of there. The story isn't worth your life. She paused at the doorway, looking back at him with a sad smile. Isn't it? Thousands of people are dead, Marcus. Families destroyed. Colonies lost, all for corporate profit. If we don't tell their story, who will? The Luna City spaceport was a maze of cargo bays and passenger terminals that never truly slept. Even at this hour, ships were arriving and departing, carrying passengers and freight to every corner of human space. Zara made her way through the crowds, her journalist's instincts automatically cataloging detailed security positions, emergency exits, potential witnesses. Pier 47 was in the older section of the port, where aging cargo haulers and independent traders docked between runs. The lighting was dimmer here, the crowds thinner, the perfect place for a clandestine meeting or an unfortunate accident. She found the pier deserted except for a single figure standing in the shadows near an airlock. As she approached, the figure stepped into the light, revealing a woman in her 40s with prematurely gray hair and the haunted expression of someone carrying terrible secrets. Ms. Voss? The woman's voice was barely above a whisper. That's me. You said you had information about Meridian. The woman nodded, glancing nervously round the empty pier. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. I was the chief atmospheric engineer for the New Dawn project. Zara felt her pulse quicken. I thought all the engineers on that project were dead. They are, all except me. Dr. Chen pulled a data drive from her jacket, holding it like it might explode. I've been hiding for 2 years, watching them hunt down everyone who knew the truth. But I can't live with this anymore. She handed Zara the drive, her hands shaking. Everything's on there. Design specifications that show the atmospheric systems were known to be flawed. Internal memos discussing the cost of fixes versus the acceptable loss of colonist lives. Communication logs between Meridian executives and government officials planning the cover-up. Zara stared at the drive, hardly daring to believe what she was holding. Why come forward now? Because they're planning to do it again. Dr. Chen's voice cracked with emotion. 12 new colony ships are under construction using the same flawed designs. They're going to sacrifice thousands more lives to protect their profits. We can stop them. Zara said firmly, with this evidence, we can expose everything. Make sure justice is finally served. Dr. Chen shook her head sadly. Justice, Ms. Voss. You don't understand how deep this goes. The people involved. They own senators, judges, even military commanders. Publishing this story won't bring justice. It will just get you killed. Then why give it to me? Because you're the only journalist who's been asking the right questions. And because she paused, tears. The cantina on Nexus Station existed in that gray space between legal and illegal, where bounty hunters, smugglers, and corporate enforcers conducted business away from prying eyes. Damon Cross sat at the bar nursing a whiskey that actually tasted like whiskey, one of the perks of hunting in civilized space instead of the outer rim hellholes he usually frequented. His neural implant chimed softly, indicating an incoming priority message. The holographic display that materialized in his peripheral vision showed a face he recognized: Rebecca Sterling, chief of corporate security for Meridian Industries. Her cold blue eyes and platinum hair were as familiar to him as his own reflection. Though considerably less welcome, Cross, her image said, the slight delay indicating the message was being transmitted across multiple sectors. I have a priority contract for you. Extreme prejudice authorization. Payment is 1 million credits. Damon's hand paused halfway to his mouth. 1 million was serious money, the kind of payday that could buy a man a new identity and a ticket to somewhere the corporate wars couldn't reach. It was also the kind of money that meant the target was either incredibly dangerous or incredibly important. The display shifted, showing him a dossier that made him set down his drink entirely. The target was a young woman named Nia Thorne, daughter of the terraforming engineer who'd sabotaged the New Dawn. According to the file, she'd stolen classified corporate data and was planning to use it for terrorist activities against Meridian installations, but it was the accompanying intelligence that made Damon's blood run cold. Nia wasn't working alone. She'd hired a smuggler named Cale Reeves to transport her to Meridian Prime. Reeves was a name Damon knew well, a former fleet pilot turned black market trader who'd earned a reputation for taking jobs that no sane person would touch. The file also mentioned a third player, an investigative journalist named Zara Voss, who'd been asking uncomfortable questions about colonial accidents. According to Sterling's intelligence, the three were planning some kind of coordinated attack on Meridian's corporate headquarters. The targets are to be eliminated with extreme prejudice. Sterling's message continued, make it look like an accident if possible, but priority is termination, not subtlety. Time is of the essence. Our sources indicate they're already en route to the core worlds. The message ended with financial codes and mission parameters, leaving Damon alone with his thoughts and the weight of a decision that would define the rest of his life. He'd been hunting bounties for 8 years, ever since mustering out of the Terran Marines with more scars than medals and fewer options than enemies. Corporate security work paid well and asked few questions, perfect for a man who'd learned to kill efficiently and sleep soundly afterward. But something about this contract felt wrong. Damon pulled up his own intelligence networks, accessing databases that Sterling probably didn't know existed. What he found made him order another whiskey and reconsider everything he thought he knew about the New Dawn incident. Elena Thorne hadn't been a terrorist, she'd been a whistleblower. The more he dug, the clearer the picture became. Meridian had knowingly used flawed atmospheric systems in their colony ships, resulting in multiple catastrophic failures over the past decade. Elena Thorne had discovered the cover-up and tried to expose it. For her trouble, she'd been framed, tried, and executed while the real criminals received promotions and bonuses. Now her daughter was trying to finish what Elena had started, and Meridian wanted all three of them dead to protect their secrets. Damon finished his whiskey and made his decision. He was going to take the contract, but not the way Sterling expected. Finding Nia Thorne and her allies required all of Damon's considerable skills as a tracker. They'd covered their trail well, false identities, encrypted communications, routing their ship through multiple transfer points to obscure their destination. But everyone left traces if you knew where to look, and Damon had been hunting people long enough to know all the hiding places. He caught up with them at a fuel depot in the Centauri system, a lawless trading post where questions weren't asked and records weren't kept. The Nighthawk was docked at Landing Bay 7, its hull scarred from years of hard use, but its engines well maintained. Damon approached carefully, his hand resting on the grip of his blaster. He found them in the ship's galley, huddled around, a holodisplay showing building schematics and security protocols. Nia Thorne looked younger than her file photos, her dark hair tied back in a practical ponytail, her clothes the functional coveralls of a station tech. But her eyes held the same fierce determination that had gotten her mother killed. Cale Reeves was older, maybe mid-30s, with the weathered look of someone who'd seen too much of the galaxy's dark side. His hand was already moving toward his weapon when Damon stepped into the doorway. The third person surprised him. Zara Voss was supposed to be on Luna, according to Sterling's intelligence, not sitting in a smuggler's ship planning what looked like a suicide mission. She was smaller than he'd expected, with short auburn hair and green eyes that missed nothing. "Afternoon, folks," Damon said casually, keeping his hands visible but ready. "Mind if I join the party?" Kel's blaster cleared leather with impressive speed, but Damon had already moved, rolling behind a bulkhead as energy bolts scorched the air where he'd been standing. "Wait," Nia's voice cut through the sudden violence. "You're Damon Cross." Damon paused, surprised that she knew his name. "That's right. And you're Nia Thorne, daughter of a woman who died for telling the truth. Did Meridian send you?" Zara demanded, her own weapon now drawn. "They did." Damon stepped out from behind cover, his hands raised but ready to draw. "They want all three of you dead. Offered me 1,000,000 credits to make it happen." Kel's aim never wavered. "So what are you waiting for? For you to hear me out?" Damon moved slowly to an empty chair, settling into it with the casual confidence of someone comfortable with violence. "See, I've been doing some research on your mother's case, Miss Thorne. Fascinating reading." Naya's expression didn't change, but he saw the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. "What did you find?" "The same thing you did, I imagine. That Elena Thorne was innocent. That Meridian framed her to cover up their own criminal negligence. That thousands of people died because corporate executives cared more about profit margins than human lives." He pulled out a data pad, sliding it across the table. "I also found this communication logs between Meridian's board of directors and various government officials discussing how to handle the Thorne problem. Your mother wasn't just killed to silence her. She was murdered to send a message to anyone else who might consider speaking out." Zara leaned forward, studying the data. "Where did you get this?" "I have my sources. Same way I found you." Damon leaned back in his chair. "The question is, what are you planning to do about it?" "We're going to expose them," Naya said firmly. "Show the galaxy what they really are." "And then what?" "You think publishing a news story is going to bring down a corporation that owns half the colonial fleet?" Damon shook his head. "They've been covering this up for years. A few leaked documents aren't going to change anything." "Then what do you suggest?" Kale asked, his weapon still trained on Damon's chest. "I suggest we hit them where it hurts their money." Damon pulled up a new file on his datapad, showing financial records and shipping schedules. Meridian has a private research facility on Kepler 438c, where they develop their atmospheric systems. It's also where they store the original design specifications that prove they knew their systems were flawed. "You want us to steal corporate secrets?" Zero looked skeptical. "I want you to steal evidence. Hard proof that can't be dismissed or covered up." Damon's expression was grim. "But more than that, I want you to understand what you're really up against. Meridian isn't just covering up past mistakes, they're planning future ones." He showed them construction schedules for 12 new colony ships, all using the same flawed atmospheric designs that had killed thousands. They're going to do it again and again until someone stops them permanently. The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Finally, Naya spoke. "Why are you helping us? You don't know us. You don't owe us anything." Damon was quiet for a moment, remembering faces from his past Marines who died under corporate flags. Civilians caught in the crossfire of wars fought for profit rather than principle. "Let's just say I've seen what happens when good people stay silent while evil ones prosper." He stood up, extending his hand to Naya. "Your mother died fighting for the truth. The least I can do is help you finish what she started." Naya stared at his outstretched hand for a long moment before taking it. "What about your contract with Meridian?" Damon smiled, and for the first time since entering the ship, it reached his eyes. "I plan to fulfill it exactly as specified. The targets will be eliminated with extreme prejudice." "I don't understand." "You will." He moved toward the door, pausing at the threshold. "But first, we need to make a stop. There's someone else who's been hunting the truth about Meridian, and I think it's time all the pieces came together." As the Nighthawk prepared to depart for coordinates Damon had provided, none of them noticed the small surveillance drone that had been monitoring their conversation. Miles away, in a secure communications center, Rebecca Sterling watched the feed W. The abandoned mining station orbiting Kepler 438c had been dark for 3 years, its corridors silent except for the whisper of recycled air and the distant hum of minimal life support. But tonight, it blazed with purpose as 5 figures gathered in what had once been the station commander's office, their faces illuminated by the glow of holographic displays showing the corporate fortress that hung in space below them. Naya Thorne stood at the center of the group, no longer the grieving daughter who'd fled Kepler for to be months ago. The woman who faced her companions had been forged in the fires of loss and tempered by the weight of truth. Her dark eyes held the same fierce determination that had driven her mother to sacrifice everything for justice. Beside her, Cale Reeves studied the tactical displays with the experienced eye of a former military pilot. His relationship with Naya had evolved from professional necessity to something deeper, a bond forged in shared danger and mutual respect that had surprised them both. Zara Voss hunched over her portable communication array, her fingers dancing across multiple keyboards as she coordinated with news networks across human space. The journalist had transformed from a careful investigator into a crusader, driven by the memory of Dr. Sarah Chen's sacrifice and the weight of the evidence. She died to provide. Damon cross-cleaned his weapons with methodical precision, his scarred hands steady despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. The bounty hunter had found something he'd thought lost forever, a cause worth fighting for. That didn't involve corporate credits or government contracts. The fifth member of their group was the most unexpected: Rebecca Sterling herself, former chief of corporate security for Meridian Industries. Her platinum hair was now dyed black, her cold blue eyes showing emotions that corporate conditioning had tried to suppress for decades. The research facility's security grid updates every 6 hours, Sterling was saying, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd helped design the very systems they planned to infiltrate. We'll have a 12-minute window between guard rotations to access the primary data core. 12 minutes to download decades of evidence, Cale muttered. Cutting it close, it would be, Naya agreed, if we were planning to leave quietly. The others turned to look at her, recognizing the tone that meant she'd made a decision that would change everything. What are you thinking? Damon asked. Naya activated a new display, showing the research facility's power grid and structural weak points. We're not just stealing evidence, we're destroying the facility and everything in it. The atmospheric designs, the research data, the prototype systems for the new colony ships, all of it. That's not theft, Sterling observed. That's terrorism. No, Zara said firmly, that's justice. Every day that facility operates, more people die. Every ship they build using those flawed designs is a death sentence for thousands of colonists. Sterling was quiet for a moment, wrestling with a lifetime of corporate loyalty against the weight of evidence she could no longer ignore. Finally, she nodded. The primary reactor has emergency overload protocols. If we can access the control systems, the facility would be completely destroyed. Damon finished, along with anyone inside. The night shift is minimal, Sterling said. 15 security guards, maybe 20 technicians. We can trigger evacuation protocols before initiating the overload. And us? Cale asked. How do we get out before the reactor goes critical? Naya was quiet for a moment, studying the tactical displays. When she spoke, her voice was calm and certain. We don't, at least, not all of us. The silence that followed was heavy with understanding. They all knew the odds corporate security would respond within minutes of any breach. Even if they managed to plant the evidence with news networks before the assault, Meridian would find ways to discredit or suppress it. Someone had to stay behind to ensure the mission succeeded. I'll do it, Damon said. I'm the most expendable. Like hell, Cale growled. This was my job from the beginning. I get Naya to the facility. She completes the mission. Stop, Naya interrupted. All of you, just stop. This isn't a suicide mission, because I say it isn't. We go in together, we complete the objectives, and we get out together. And if that's not possible, Zara asked quietly. Naya met her eyes with unflinching resolve. Then we make sure the truth survives, even if we don't. The assault began at 0300 station time, when the facility's skeleton crew was at its most vulnerable. The Nighthawk approached on a trajectory that mimicked routine supply traffic, its transponder broadcasting false identification codes that Sterling had provided. They were within weapons range before the facility's sensors registered the deception. Incoming transmission, Zara reported from the communication station. They're demanding identification and ordering us to maintain distance. Tell them we're responding to a distress call, Naya said. Atmospheric breach in Section 7. It was a lie. That bought them precious seconds, long enough for Cale to maneuver the ship into docking position, and for Damon to neutralize the security checkpoint with surgical precision. They moved through the facility's corridors like a surgical strike team, each member playing their part with deadly efficiency. Sterling's knowledge of the internal layout allowed them to avoid patrol routes and security cameras. Damon's combat experience cleared their path when avoidance wasn't possible. Zara's technical skills disabled alarm systems and opened secured doors. But it was Naya who led them deeper into the heart of the facility, driven by a purpose that burned brighter than fear or doubt. The primary data core was housed in the facility's most secure section, protected by biometric scanners and armed guards. Sterling's access codes got them through the first two checkpoints, but the final barrier required clearance that even she didn't possess: thermal charges. Damon suggested, studying the reinforced door, blow it open and deal with whatever's on the other side. Too much risk of damaging the data, Naya replied. She pulled out a device that looked like a cross between a data pad and a welding torch. My mother designed this for emergency access to ship systems. It should work on any Meridian security grid. The device interfaced with the door's control panel, its quantum processors working to decrypt security protocols that had taken years to develop. Warning lights flashed as the system detected the intrusion. But Alna Thorne's final gift to her daughter proved stronger than corporate security. The vault door hissed open, revealing a chamber lined with quantum storage drives containing decades of research and development data. At the center of the room stood a holographic display, showing the current status of Meridian's colonial operations: 12 ships under construction, their atmospheric systems incorporating the same fatal flaws that had killed thousands. There, Sterling breathed, pointing to a specific storage ray. Everything you need is in those drives. Design specifications, test results showing the flaws, communication logs between executives discussing acceptable casualty rates. Zara was already connecting her portable uplink to the storage system, initiating the download that would beam copies of the evidence to news networks across human space. 20 minutes for full transfer, she reported, assuming we can maintain the connection. They couldn't. Alarms began blaring throughout the facility as security teams converged on their position. Energy bolts scorched the air around them as corporate guards attempted to breach the vault. Time to go, Damon announced, returning fire through the doorway. The evidence is copying. We can complete the mission from orbit. No. Naya moved to the central control console, her fingers flying across interfaces that controlled the facility's reactor systems. The data isn't enough. They'll find ways to discredit it, claim it's fabricated, delay investigations until the new ship's launch. We have to destroy their ability to build more death traps. Naya, don't. Kale pleaded. There has to be another way. She looked at him with eyes that held infinite sadness and unwavering resolve. There's no other way. How many more ships, Kale? How many more colonies? My mother died to stop this, and they killed her for it. Someone has to finish what she started. Her fingers found the reactor override controls, beginning the sequence that would turn the facility's power source into a weapon. Emergency klaxons joined the security alarms as automated systems detected the impending overload. Evacuation protocols activated, the facility's AI announced in calm, measured tones. All personnel report to emergency stations. Reactor breach imminent. Sterling moved to Naya's side, her hands joining the younger woman's on the control interface. If we're doing this, let's do it right. Full core overload, maximum dispersion pattern. Nothing survives. Rebecca, you don't have to. Yes, I do. The former security chief's voice carried the weight of years of complicity and guilt. I helped build this system. I enforced their lies. This is my chance to tear it all down. Damon appeared in the doorway, his armor scorched from the firefight in the corridor. Security teams are falling back. They know what's happening. We have maybe 5 minutes before this place turns into a small star. The upload is complete, Zara announced. Evidence is broadcasting across 27 networks. Even if they try to suppress it, too many people will have seen the truth. Kale grabbed Naya's arm, trying to pull her away from the control console. That's enough. Mission accomplished. Let